So I just wanted to say, by way of beginning, that thank you very much for allowing us to interview you. So if you could say a little bit about who you are and tell us a little bit about the rally and march that's happening on May 5th.
Okay, well, bonjour ni, Joshua Benisi Indigenous, Howard City and Dunjaba Mahinga Dede. Hi, my name is Georgia Green. I'm 15 and I am co-leading the youth-led march and rally in Grand Rapids at the Blue Bridge. About the reasons behind the march. Indigenous people are murdered at a rate 10 times higher than white people, and their cases are less likely to be prosecuted. And this is youth-led because these disparities directly impact people in my age group. The third leading cause of death in Indigenous girls my age is homicide.
Okay. So you're only 15, so can you tell us about when you got involved with this issue and maybe what made you realize that you needed to become involved in this issue?
I think I decided to be involved at a Line 5 protest where people were drawing a line, a connection between oil pipelines and murdered and missing Indigenous people, that connection being man camps. Man camps are, they target women in my age group, not only adult women, but teenage girls. And 1/3 of all Indigenous women are raped in their lifetime. And I have 2 sisters. So I think that's when I decided that I wanted to be involved.
Oh. Thank you for your courage to do that, which sort of leads me to the next question. I think most people, even people who are maybe involved in activist work, aren't aware of what you're talking about, that Indigenous women and girls are being disappeared and murdered at a really high rate. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that even if people who are like against pipeline building, people who are environmental activists or climate justice activists, aren't aware of the fact that it more directly impacts Indigenous people like yourself?
Well, I think the reason that these issues aren't addressed the same way or in as much attention as the other issues or some other issues is because this issue does not directly affect white people. This is an Indigenous issue, and I think the lack of attention to these issues is directly related to racism and just the overall lack of value for our people. And I think that the reason it's so important that we gain attraction and attention to this issue is because we all know that the larger movements, the bigger movements, gather the most attention and then the most support, and then through that the most change. And that's why I think that is so important that we, at our march, it is not just a call for awareness, but a demand for justice. And I think that's why gathering attention for it is so important.
Right. That's a great response. Thank you. So what do you think are the kind of the root causes or the main reasons why so many Indigenous women and girls are being disappeared, particularly in recent years?
In relation to settler colonialism?
Yes.
The murdered and missing Indigenous people crisis began when the white man washed up on these shores and continued through the 21st century and still happens today. Like I said, Indigenous people are murdered at a rate 10 times higher than white people, and other forms of settler colonialism that affect these are oil pipelines, like I mentioned. In fact, these man camps that come along with oil pipelines are not only common, but they have become expected. In fact, oil companies set aside funds in advance to pay for the victims of their employees to address that, not if their employees have victims, but when they do. Another form of settler colonialism is the reservations. It's a common misconception that it is Native people hurting other Native people when that's just simply untrue. The fact is that 96% of violence committed against Native people is committed by non-natives on Native-owned land.
My understanding is that you designed the flyer for this year's rally, and I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about why you think, a little bit about the flyer itself, but also about why activism and art is so intertwined and important to you particularly.
Yeah. Well, Native Circle of Newaygo County asked me to do the flyer last year, and I did, and they asked me again this year. And this year my art has changed a little bit since last year, and something that was really important to me was gathering representation from the Two-Spirit community, which there are 3 youth on the flyer, and one of them is Two-Spirit. And another thing that I made sure to incorporate was the red dress, which is the symbol of the Murdered and Missing Indigenous People movement. Another thing is the War Club, which is extremely important to me because there's a tribal elder in our community, Pumpkin Shenanigans, and she teaches girls on self-defense, and one of the things that she used to say was that us girls, us Indigenous girls, we need to start carrying knives, and we need to carry tools of self-defense, and we need to learn how to fight, and we must not be soft targets. And I think that that's exactly what that War Club represents, is that we will not tolerate this, and that we will fight back, and that we won't be soft targets.
Great, that's powerful. Thank you. Maybe by way of wrapping up the interview, I'm wondering, for people who are going to be watching this interview, what message or messages do you want to communicate to them? What do you think is most important that they walk away from after watching this video?
I think that after this interview, if you've watched this interview, then you have been informed and that you have been made aware, and that now is the time to show up and show out. We don't need more allies. What we need is accomplices, people who are going to fight beside us. And so if you've watched this video, then you've been informed, and I hope to see you at our march on May the 5th.
And what time does the march begin?
It is at 4 o'clock. It will be at the Blue Bridge in downtown Grand Rapids. We will be lighting the Blue Bridge red for 5 days in honor of our stolen relatives.
Great. Well, thank you so much again for letting us speak with you.
Thank you so much, Jeff.